Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir, Annie. For those of you watching on YouTube, just to let you know, we're having video difficulties. So you'll be able to hear us and hear the presentation, but you may not be, you will not be able to see us. So please be patient as we try to rectify that during the meeting. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Area, and wish to recognize the neighboring community of Doki's First Nation. While we meet today, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their culture. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples that call this land home. Before we get into the formal agenda, I think we need to take a moment to acknowledge what's happening in the Ukraine. It would be very much remiss of me and of this council not to do so. So in preparation for tonight's meeting, I was trying to come up with the appropriate words to express our horror as to what's happening out there. So of course, I turned to someone that I have a deep respect for and who's a lot wiser and more thoughtful than I could ever be. And that's the Dalai Lama. And he said a few days ago, as I was listening to him, the following: I have been deeply saddened by the conflict in Ukraine. Our world has come so interdependent that violent conflict between two countries inevitably impact the rest of the world. War is outdated. Nonviolence is the only way. We need to develop a sense of oneness of humanity by considering other human beings as brothers and sisters. This is how we build a more peaceful world. Problems and disagreement are best resolved through dialogue. Genuine peace comes about through mutual understanding and respect for each other's well-being. We must not lose hope. The 20th century was a century of war and bloodshed. The 21st century must be a century of dialogue. He finishes off by saying, I pray that peace is swiftly restored to the Ukraine. So with that, on behalf of the municipality of French River, I echo the Dalai Lama's thoughts and wish for a peaceful end to this conflict. Certainly our hearts go out to every Ukrainian, whether they are abroad or the families here that have families abroad. So with that, I'm going to turn to our agenda that you have before you, and I need a resolution to adopt the agenda. Bob and Randy. All those in favor? Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest tonight? Seeing none. Now, today is the presentation of our draft final 2022 budget, and I will turn the presentation over to Mark G and with comments from Mark F. And I believe can the public see the presentation in a minute? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and welcome to members of the public. Welcome to the people joining us through our YouTube link. And before I start with the budget presentation for this year, I'd be remiss without thanking the participation of mayor and council in these budget deliberations. And a special thanks to our treasurer for coordinating all the numbers for us, and a special thanks to all of our managers and department heads so that we can share, I think is a good news story for this community in the 2022 budget process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give an overview of our budget process and some of the highlights of the budget process, and highlight our reserve positions and also some of the key changes within each department. And if you have questions, please, you've seen the presentation in detail before. If there's anything that you'd like me to comment on, I'd be happy to do so. So just for the general public's information, we started our process back in November at the staff level, met with council for pre-budget deliberations, and here we are today with the results of our budget process, March 2nd, doing our public presentation with the hopes of going back to council on March 16th for the official adoption of the 2022 budget. During the planning sessions, we discuss key challenges that we're working on, or that are a challenge to us. So pandemic continues to be a challenge. Waste management, environmental operations in terms of landfill capacity, curbside recycling, the Monte-Guérin culvert replacement, the sewer infrastructure, the upgrades and improvements to the facade at the municipal complex and arena, human resources in terms of benefits and inflation, the ongoing provincial issue in terms of premiums for liability insurance, the increases in our board levies, and then talked about our capital reserves in terms of equipment and vehicle replacements, and just in general, the inflation and the challenges that we're seeing today with the results of what's happening in the world events lately with the price of gas and other increases in inflation. Some of the additional things that council talked about and gave staff homework to work on to come back is continued beautification projects, prioritizing the Monte-Guérin culvert replacement, and also finishing the Joe Chartrand Park outdoor sound system and playground equipment. Other areas of improvements that they wanted for us to look at is the improvements to the parks in Alban and Wellville in terms of the bleachers, maintenance and benches at the parks, and some improvements at the Alban Community Park as well. Additional playground equipment at the Joe Chartrand Park. Finishing our decorative signs, which would include the secondary highways of Highway 535 and Highway 64, including the completion of the Highway 69 project coming from Toronto. We discussed a mural program, which we've included in the budget, and then having a line item for council for consideration. Throughout the year, a lot of requests come to council, usually after the fact of budget. And being the big bad person that I am, we don't have it in the budget, so we can't contribute most of the time. So council asked us to come up with sort of a line item to have those for consideration. All being said, the directive from council from that day was, if you can get this all in place for 2% or under, we'd be very happy and pleased. So just a quick overview from 2021. You'll notice we did well. We exceeded our revenues by $500,000. Now, so there's some key highlights that I'd like to mention. We received the one-time gas funding, additional fund of $162,000. Our building permit revenues were exceedingly high this year, of about in the neighborhood of $70,000 over what we budgeted. We received COVID funding of about $78,000. So as you can see, a lot of those overages, we met most of our revenues, but we had additional surprises throughout the year, which was nice. In terms of expenses, we fairly were on budget with expenses being slightly under by $100,000. End result is going through our amortization and our transfers to reserves and use of reserves. At the end of the day, last year we had attributed about $402,000 of our general surplus. We only needed to go into that surplus for $46,000 in 2021. So technically we've had a $355,000 surplus because we didn't need to go into our general surplus. Okay. So that's all I'll spend on 2021. So just high level departmental 2022 budget to 2021 budget, 2022 budget, sorry. So you'll see an increase in revenues in general government of approximately 128,000. And I'll go through these in the details in the next slide. So I'm just going through additional increase in revenues of 10,000 for fire. Additional police was pretty well a net for this year because there was a decrease in our service fees from the OPP of about 4,500. An increase in revenues in bylaw of about 20,500. $25,000 increase in projected revenues in building. Emergency services, a decrease of 8,000 in revenues, and I'll explain that later in the further slides. Public Works, $101,000 increase in revenues. Environmental services as well, an increase due to special projects. Health stayed. Health was an increase of 13,500. The revenues stayed the same, sorry. Social, there was no change in revenues. Recreation, there's a big increase in revenues due to the project at the Alvin Community Center. And then planning and development, pretty well net. And then a $15,000 decrease in taxation and operating, which is directly related to the decrease in our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, which is our main funding from the province for our operations. So just a quick overview of expenses. So you'll see an increase in general government, about 155,000, which we'll go into details of what those changes are. You'll see an increase in the fire of 34,000, a decrease in police of 4,000 because of the reduction of expenses from OPP, a reduction of an increase in bylaw of 3,800, a reduction in building of about 4,000, a reduction in emergency services, which is basically our COVID funding that we use to subsidize the potential increases, which I'll explain a little later on. Public Works, you'll see a decrease of about 17,500, an increase of 105,000 in environmental services. Health, an increase of 23,000, which is a combination of increases from the health unit and the DSAB board for ambulance services. An $8,300 increase in social services from DSAB for family, for social housing, Ontario Works, and for childcare. And then recreation, a decrease in expenses of 5,600 and a slight decrease in planning and development because Mark was moving things around in terms of amortization. So just the net between 2022 and 2021, you'll see increases in general government, fire, decreases in bylaw, building, emergency services, public works, increases in health, social, and increased revenues due to the project in recreation, and then the funding of 15,700. So just to go through each department, we put this across the, sorry, that's okay. I have my notes here. I'm fine. Under general governments, you'll see that the projects that weren't finished in 2021, but funded by the modernization fund, finished in 2021. So there's a decrease in revenues of 30,000. Asset management, which is a new software in terms of modernization that will be funded by modernization to assist us with long-term planning for our assets, building equipment, vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. Internet access for Edo Señal. So we embarked Edo Señal onto our platform for internet services. So there's additional revenue of about $10,000 for the year. There's a corresponding expense that you'll see later on. And then interest fees, there's increased interest fees of 13,000 that we're projecting. And then you'll see net proceeds from the sale of 37 Saint Antoine, which is still in the final stages of the official plan amendment. Once that's complete, it comes back to council for the zoning amendment of which we can complete that sale. And we'll go into details of what the council decided to do with those funds going forward. Continuing projects from 2021, which is basically food bank and youth internship funding. Wage increases, which just the traditional yearly increases as per negotiations. And the negotiations aren't due till 2023. The big one increase in insurance premiums, about 43,000. We have to add the cost of the 2022 elections of 20,000, which is being funded by one of our reserves. As council had discussed during their deliberations, they wanted to ensure the firefighters project, which was the enhanced equipment for first response along with the ambulance services of defibrillators. And so council put $5,000 aside for that project should they fall short on their fundraising, and also 5,000 for the donations that may come to council's attention throughout the year. The increase in our bandwidth, so we were at 100 megabytes per second. We've increased to 200 to ensure that sessions like this evening can be broadcasted through the internet at the same time. Plus, we're servicing all of our other buildings within the Noelville and catchment area from this service. And so some additional maintenance for our air conditioning units in this building. And then under other, it's basically amortization costs for the proposed capital improvements to this building this year. Fire department, we've increased revenues from 0 budgeted to 10,000. So usually that comes from agreements with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry in terms of assisting them with firefighting within the area on Crown land. It's also MTO revenues for responding to accidents along the highways. And there's also fire building permit fees in there, and also we recuperate from Fire Marquee, which is, recuperates from insurance from household fires if it's there. There's the general wage increase for the firefighters, and an additional increase for the volunteers of approximately 5,000. You'll see that last year we had one-time expenses, so we like to show the general public and council that those one-time expenses do come off the book. So you'll see a reduction of 4,500 for the dress uniforms that we spoke of in 2021. The big increase in fire is the amortization of the new truck, which is scheduled to come in June, Mark, of this year. So the mini pumper. And then under other, it's just general maintenance, increased repairs, and testing and certification for the equipment increases. You'll see under emergency services, basically our expenses drew down. Last year we had budgeted 63,000. This year we're only budgeting 38,000 from that expense, and our revenues are down by 8,000. Police, like I said, this now has been set up with the changes that council made last year as a in and out in terms of user fees. So as the OPP fees decrease, then the fees charged to the households will decrease as well. And so it's $4,500 less expenses, $4,500 less revenue. Bylaw. You'll see the increase in revenues directly related to the internship program that we received for the hiring of our new bylaw enforcement officer. So the balance of that revenue in 2022 comes up to 20,500. And then just the general wage increases for bylaw of 3,800 in the expenses. Building permits, you'll notice we've increased the projected revenues after discussions with our chief building official, feeling confident that we can raise that amount by 35,000 in and out in terms of administrative salaries that we charge to the shared services, and then increases into our shared agreement for the public's information. The shared agreement is now between 3 municipalities rather than 4. So the municipalities of St. Charles, Killarney, and ourselves in French River. In Public Works, We've received a couple of additional funding. So our Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund formula-based funding has increased by 68,000. So it used to be 57. We're now sitting at about just over 126,000. New funding that you'll see on the agenda this evening that we're asking council to approve the contract, the NORDS funding from the Northern Ontario Fund, which is $143,500 over 5 years, to be specifically used on roads associated with aggregate services, if I recall, but Mark can explain to you that during the agreement. Our aggregate royalties have steadily increased over the years, so we've increased that revenue by 9,000. Projects that we finished, they were completed in 2021. So there's a reduction of 120, which is basically the upgrades to the Public Works building. There's a balance left to finish this year. Mark transferred or reallocated some of the HR costs to the landfill and environmental services, which is a decrease of 67. And then the balance of the regular HR increases and benefits of 45. Increase in materials for dust control and granular materials of 30,000. We're anticipating, in these numbers we projected prior to what we're seeing at the gas pumps of late, of about 40,000. Again, we're showing that we're decreasing a certain line item by 45, which is the engineering costs of Montéguérin. And then we're requesting an increase for signage maintenance and for bylaw services of 5,000. And then the other is mainly amortization for the new grader that we're purchasing this year. Environmental services, we're increasing the user fees. So we've been very fortunate in scrap metal sales, and also the former Stewardship Council, which is falling under a new program. So we've increased those funds by about $38,000. You'll see an In and Out, which is the new curbside recycling pilot project that should be commencing May 14th, May 14th of 2022. The Environmental Services Committee had the discussion last Thursday, and May 12th. Thank you, Bob. I knew it was May something that week. So basically that project's going to start. It'll be every 2 weeks on Thursdays, and everybody on the list will be picked up on the Thursday. So that information will be coming out, and bylaw, and we'll be providing the 2 recycling bins to each resident on the system once they come in April, hopefully. The reallocation of the operator from Public Works to Environmental Services, and then your general wage increase in benefits. And the engineering costs that we set out last year to prepare for the environmental assessment completion of the landfill for future expansion. And then again, $5,000 basically related to amortization, which was the improvements to the Public Works waste transfer site that were completed last year. Sewer, no concrete changes in sewer, everything stayed the same, and the user rate will remain at the $375 as in previous years. Health services, as I spoke to earlier, public health increase of 8,500, ambulance service increase of 14,500. For council's information, the talks with the contract of the ambulance service, which has been ongoing since 2019, is now going to arbitration, if I'm not mistaken, Richard, or the completed conciliation, but asked for, there's a request for a no board report. So we'll see how that progresses and ends up. And then the social and family services, which is your childcare, social housing, and Ontario Works, an increase of 8,258. So just in terms of percentages, the health unit percentage increase was 7% globally. And the DSAB, although the numbers are higher for us, affects us a little bit higher. They got a much bigger budget. Their increase was 1.91% from previous year. Recreation and cultural services. The library, you'll see, isn't really mentioned. For the last 2 years, the library has been very efficiently run, and they've asked for no increase from municipal support. So they remain at the $63,000, which is great. You'll see the increased revenues for the ACC project. We're trying to complete the musical instruments. They've been received, so they'll be installed this spring. And then the projects deferred from 2021. And then the ball field bleacher in Albin Park and murals program of 20,000. And then again, just a slight reduction in the contractual services and materials. We're saving a little bit of money because of the project at the Albin Community Center in terms of capital improvements. Planning and development, which it also includes your economic development. So no major increases in those two line items. What you'll see here, a decrease of 2,300, which is basically taking the amortization of our welcome sign on Highway 69 and moving it into the Public Works budget. You'll see later on in your agenda today, we're proposing signing a contract with economic partners for the continuation of our economic development program. And you'll see there's no increases in the budget for this year. And then you'll see finally, in terms of taxation, the reduction of 15,000 from our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant. All right. In terms of just a quick update on projects last year that we were unable to complete for various reasons. So the rehabilitation of the sidewalks was put aside. We were trying to generate additional revenues from grants. That wasn't successful. So we're proceeding with last year's revenue for sidewalk repairs and including this year's contribution. So it'll be a total of 60,000 that you'll see in the budget, capital budget. There's a balance of 30,000 to complete the Public Works building upgrades. The sewer lift station was scheduled to be worked on last year, but had to be deferred to 2022 by Aqua. The musical instrument programs, the Joe Chartrand Park, we had set aside funds for musical swing and some musical equipment, along with some per diems for some artists to do weekly concerts. COVID put a damper on much of this, so it was put aside for 2022. And then there was an efficiency improvement project for additional software in the finance department that wasn't completed, but is scheduled to be done this year. New projects, the curbside recycling of 62,000. The Wally Lamodin Park is a continued project in partnership with the Canado Foundation. Park and playground equipment improvements, which I'll speak to in the capital projects. Continuation of the beautification project, which was extremely successful last year. So we're contributing another, council's contributing another 10,000. The walking trails, we've got positive reviews on the trails. There's a little bit of minor configuration to do to ensure one part of the trail meets some form of accessibility standards, and creating a little pathway to overlook the pond as well. So those to complete that project, we're hoping to do that in 2022. Phase 2 of the Albin Community Center, approximately 548,000. The new purchase of the fire truck, which council authorized last year, but is to be received this year in June, and the purchase of a new grader to replace the 1989 grader. 92, sorry, I'm off by 3 years. And then our decorative welcome signs off the Highway 535 and Highway 64 in the amount of 30,000. So a little bit more detailed list of our capital projects. So you'll see the fascia rehabilitation program for this building here. Adding an additional flagpole at the municipal building to be able to fly a special occasion or special flags during special ceremonies. The heater replacement in the ambulance, this we've been struggling with the ambulance services and keeping consistent heat. Upon further consultation with our engineers and our consultants, we are going to give them their sole heating system and cooling system so they can have ultimate control. Big problem we're having is the rest of the building operates 5 days a week. Business hours, they operate 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, which is creating fluctuation in cold and heat. Whoop. In terms of fire department, mini pumper fire truck, replacement of the furnace at the fire hall, the water treatment system. There's other potential areas that we're exploring in terms of funding, and purchasing new fire hoses and new portable fire pumps. With the older fire pumps, although not meeting the requirements of the fire department, will be donated to island volunteer groups to assist in their fire protection services. Public Works, you'll see that we've actually increased from traditional. We went from 600 to 687,000. We'll have a detailed list of what is proposed for 2022. The sidewalks that I spoke of 60,000. The completion of the building upgrades of 30,000, our continued streetlight program, the replacement of our grader of 450,000. Road traffic device, which is basically the Black Cat, which is, let's call it for better sake, a camouflage radar gun. How's that? To track the speeds and traffic and counts of cars. So I'm just being sarcastic here a little bit, but certainly will help us in terms of identifying if there's a real issue and taking better counts of our traffic within our roads. Bollards, again, remember the question when we were meeting with our insurance companies, are we following risk assessment? This is one of the recommendations that they propose, is having bollards between the entrances of our garage doors. So we'll start with the Public Works building. And then putting cameras at the front entrance of our Public Works building. We're experiencing difficulties. It's not a public office, and people are going to knock there. So they'll be able to, in terms of a health and safety, it should monitor who's coming to the door at that point. And then 2 projects into the sewer system, which is the uncompleted work of the sewer lift station and the replacement of our flow meter at the David Street station. Long list this year, people. And then recreation, we spoke of the rehabilitation of the Albion Community Center and musical instruments, the ice resurfacer self-leveling system. So for the general public, basically the self-leveling system is a system to keep the thickness of your ice at a consistent level. Because for every arena has this, is once you get ice build up, your system and pumps and motors work harder to keep the ice at the proper temperature, thus increasing the energy costs. So the whole intent here is to keep the perfect perfect thickness of ice to be able to save on energy costs going forward. Replacement of the brine pump, which is a circulation system of the ice pad. The rehabilitation of the Shanty Bay Wharf. It's been an ongoing issue for a couple of years, and we're proposing to do the replacement of the launch there. Hopefully, with COVID being at its end, we'll finish off that project and then do the improvements of the washroom canteen roof and the bleachers over at the ball fields, and in hopes that the family tournament comes back to fruition after a 2-year absence. Outdoor sauna equipment in Joe Chartrand Park, $25,000. And playground equipment at Joe Chartrand Park at $100,000. So last year we had a nominal fee put in for swings. We tried to apply for funding to make the project a little bit bigger. Thanks to some of the surpluses that we've seen, council has agreed to put in a substantial amount of money to upgrade that swing set to a playground set at Joe Chartrand Park. And then our decorative welcome signs at 535 and Highway 64. So total projects for 2022, just under $3 million. Staff and department heads have a lot of work cut out for them in the next 6 to 8 months. Just a quick overview, you'll see the roads that we're looking at for 2022 is Serenity Bay, Shanty Bay, development of a turnaround, La Brosse Road, the widening of the road, 3 Camp Road, Leclerc Road, Pilon, Gilbert, Lise, Gauthier, and Haas are part 1. So part 1 is basically a lift of gravel, ditching and culvert replacement. Part 2 will be the double hard surface. Quick overview of our reserves, our capital reserves and operating reserves. So at the beginning, and I forgot, and I'm sure Mark will tell you, The numbers that I presented for 2021 in our starting reserve point are unaudited. I feel very comfortable in the numbers that Mark has presented, but I just wanted to make sure that we had that caveat out there. So we're starting at $6.2 million in reserves. We're making use of $2.6 million to complete the projects that we've submitted and council has approved. We're recontributing through amortization to the reserve of just over 1.15 million. And then we're contributing to the reserve to try to build up the equipment reserve by 100,000, our landfill reserves of 40,000, and then we're also contributing another $262,000 to our operating reserves, which will go into details in the next slide. So what we're looking at is using about $281,000 of that general reserve. So one is to complete the elections of 2022. You'll notice here that we're getting into our working fund reserve. And if you recall why we set up that reserve is to offset some increases that we may see, uncontrollable cost increases. So we've attributed a good part of our insurance increases to that. And we've also attributed the health unit and DSAB increases to that to try to lessen the impact to our taxpayers. The nice thing is the building department with the nice year that they had last year, they actually generated a profit within that department, within the municipal act or the building code act. The profits are to be reinvested within that department. So you'll see what we did this year is we took last year's profits and put them into a building control reserve, but using that reserve to offset the expenses of that department for 2022. Winter control, we're increasing it by another 43,000, 44,000. So that brings us up to a total of 250,000, which gives us 1 year ahead we're 1 year ahead of the game. So we should be in a very comfortable position to absorb any high winter event that may occur in the future. We're contributing an additional $20,000 into the community development, which brings us to a total of 48,000. And that's basically asking the next council to have funds aside to go through a visioning exercise and a community consultation exercise to see where the future of the municipality is in terms of buildings, facilities, services. So that's been set up and ready to go in the first year of a new council. Signage, you'll see we're attributing the sale of, or the net sale of the 37 Saint Antoine, which is about 102,210 to signage. So you'll see we had a reserve of 21,000. We wanted to use 30,000 of that reserve to complete the secondary decorative signs. The balance will be used 93,000. I think I can't see with the 93,000 to finish and complete the sign on Highway 69 coming from Toronto. So if everything goes well and the sale is complete, then the welcome decorative signs for the municipality will be complete at the end of this term of council. And then you'll notice parks. So we had 38. We are using 130. We're adding 91, and that's basically the playground equipment upgrade that we wanted, that council wanted to address and taken care of at Joe Chapdelaine Park. Now, one more reserve fund or deferred revenues. So deferred parkland revenues, 23,000 we're dipping into. That's to match the funds received for the La Mondain Beach project. The modernization fund, we're dipping into 107,000. That's 62,000 for the curbside recycling project, 20,000 for the finance project for software, and 25,000 for the software that we're looking at to modernize our asset management program. We're dipping into our COVID-19 Safe Restart program of 55,000. That's basically going to be used for the continued purchase of PPEs, lost revenues at the arena since it was closed for a month or a month and a half. And we're also dipping into that to offset some of the cost increases related to shortage, to fuel and supply chain issues that have raised costs. This fund we're not touching. And then you'll notice a new fund that we've created, the Monte-Guerin Rehabilitation Fund. So the 162,000 that we received in gas tax over and above what in 2021 has been set aside as the opening balance. And that we're projecting to put the 2022 gas tax, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund formula-based funding, and the new fund from NORS that you'll be approving the contract tonight for a total of 438,000, 39,000. That gives us a total in reserve for this project of 600,000, plus your bridge reserve in your capital, which is sitting at 200,000. So we're well on our way to be able to fund this project in 2023. As council is aware, we are also attributing a study to see if we can, rather than replace that box culvert, if we can do an insert, which will significantly reduce the cost of that rehabilitation. We're hoping to get the results of that study in the next month to 6 weeks. Now, end result. So we're looking at total revenues in 2022 of 9.9 million. Expenses of 9,100,000. We add our amortization, the post-closure costs, what we're going to spend in capital additions, what we're transferring to reserves and deferred revenue of 2 million that we spoke of in the reserve funds, what we're using from reserves to offset some of our projects. And then again, as we do every year, in order to lessen the impact on our residents, we're using our use of our general surplus, which is sitting at about just over $1 million, Mr. Treasurer, again, unaudited. So we're proposing to use 333,000 to increase some of those operational reserves that we talked about, increase the equipment capital, and then one-time fees for fire training for the study of Monte-Guerin for the reduction of the culvert, the park artists, the donations, and beautification projects. So end result is we have a shortfall of just over $100,000, which represents the general taxpayer, general tax levy increase of just under 2%, which council asked us to stay below 2%. So we're sitting at 1.98%. Just to give you an idea, how this gets spread out within the various departments. So 29% of public works, which is our biggest department, general government second at 22%, and then everything moves around from there. Where do our revenues come from? So 51% it comes from our taxation, user charges 11%, provincial government 27%, federal, which is basically your gas tax, 4%. And then other user fees and charges. What's this mean to the general taxpayer and how it affects their taxes? So under impact, the average assessment of property or household is about $250,000. So the treasurer used $250,000. And we know the assessment hasn't increased in the last 2 years, so it's been frozen. So $250,000 under the new tax rate, we're looking at a tax increase of $30.52 for 2022, based on a household of 250,000. The education tax rate hasn't changed. The OPP, we have it here as unchanged. Sewer is unchanged. So that, sorry. Whoops, I'm gonna lose it now. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. So what's the still didn't do it right. So 2,177 in terms of dollars, what dollar amount goes to each department? That's basically what this slide says. So out of that 2,177, 638 of that goes to public works, 485 to general government, planning and development gets 27, bylaw 25, fire services 116, recreation 212, and environmental landfill operations 276. Just to give you an idea in terms of dollar wise where your taxes go. You'll see here from 2016 to 2022, if your assessment has, theoretically, if your assessment would have been 250 throughout those whole years, basically you looked at an overall increase from 2016 to 2022 of approximately $143, or on average about $20.50 per year. And that basically completes my presentation. Again, thank you for your patience. I know you've heard this more than once, and I turn it back over to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I think it's an excellent presentation, and kudos to everyone who participated and made council's wishes come true, which is a tax increase of less than 2%. Considering the difficult times that we find ourselves. So congratulations to everyone, to all staff members, directors, treasurer, CAO, clerk, etc., for the great work. And I have Randy who would like to speak.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just want to first off say thank you to the staff. You've all done a wonderful job again this year to bring us a really neat, tidy budget that makes everybody here on council look really good. And we're really proud of our staff here. So thank you so much for that. A question to you, Mark, that maybe you can answer. It's not really an important, but it is just curiosity more than anything. For under the recreation department for the library, Chris isn't here, so maybe you can answer. We traditionally offered children's programming through the summer months, and COVID clawed that back. The budget's maintained the same year over year. Are we going to be implementing some children programming this year in the spring because COVID restrictions are being removed?
I know our treasurer participates on the board meetings, and I know we have a new board member on the library board as well. Madam Mayor, I know you've been following the discussions. I think I know what the answer is, but
it is included in the library approved budget. So there is funds for the children's projects and adults also, seniors projects, sorry.
And the idea is to restart the programming. And again, a lot of it depends on what happens in the province over the next couple months. But the idea is to restart these programs.
Thank you. It's really good to hear that the kids this year summer will have the opportunities, because I know the community really enjoyed those programs 2 years ago before we had to shelve them for the most part. So thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would just like to echo in and follow your words, Madam Mayor. But congratulations to the staff. The presentation is easy to follow. I hope the people online can follow this, and congratulations. Great job, guys, everyone. Merci.
Any other comments? Comments from the, it's a public meeting, so you're allowed to speak. No, you're good. All right.
I have a comment.
Oh, okay. I'll go to Mark.
basically when we report overall, we report on changes. So I just want to reassure council and the members of the public, Canada Day, it's still on the books to be held this year, and we do have the funding in place. Council contribution along with a grant application. So keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully things will work out this year.
I think I forgot Risha.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to, I guess I'll use the word to echo. I think the budget's great. It's not a large increase. I think people will be okay with that, but more so the details of how this has been spread out and how we're spending it is I think is a very good spend, and I'm happy with it. So 2% I can live with. Thanks.
Randy, did you have something else?
I was just going to say, if any Sudbury residents or staff are on this Facebook page, they can have our treasurer.
Dean.
I know, just echoing comments that have been made. I like the presentation. I think that from the public's point of view, it's an easy thing to basically understand. And the budgeting process is a bit complicated for even most of us, and for the public to be able to see quite clearly where the money is going. It's got to be a good thing. And I too think the staff have done a great job. I think it's the best presented budget that I've seen yet. And so quite a few years. I mean, very, very easy to do, not to sound bad about anything in the past, but this has just been very well done. I'm kind of surprised only at one thing, and that's the amount of changes dollar-wise in the budget here from where it was in the draft. It's really significant. There's a lot of not necessarily higher or lower, just changes in the way we're proposing spending money compared to what was in our draft.
I'll let the treasurer respond because I know what the answer is. Go ahead.
No, we maintain the same, maybe the presentation's different, but the same information. We didn't change any numbers. So the same tax increase, tax levy increase.
Maybe it's in the
maybe-
presentation.
Yeah, basically what we've done, Councillor Dean, is we've condensed a lot of the information that you saw the details of during the budget. So some line items have been coupled together. So the amounts you may see may be a little bit different, but if you go back to the details that you were presented on February 3rd, because we would have 100-page, as you know, we would have a 100-page presentation if we went through all the details we did on February 3rd.
Is this intended now to be the only public presentation?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Any further comments? Vinny?
Okay. I also think it's great that the budget is staying at 2%. I think it's a really decent amount considering it's under, cost of living. I think staff has done a great job over the last 4 years. All in all, I think with all the projects that you guys have all worked so hard that we've given you guys, I think it's been pretty good. And I think we've seen all the good from it. I mean, I think a lot of people are happy. The roads have increased dramatically. We're moving ahead with recycling projects, and, we've thought of the families and the kids that live here year round. And we've also, had to fight the fire and the water. And so we've had a lot of struggles in COVID. So I think it's pretty amazing. So good job. You make us look good.
They most certainly do, and we'll knock on wood with regards to fire and floods. So that we don't see that come back. Any other comments with regards to this?
So just one last
Sure.
comment in terms of process. So if the general public has questions, please, there's 2 weeks before we bring it back to council for official adoption of the bylaws of March 16th. So please forward your questions to the administration or to your counselors to send to us, and we will answer those questions.
Perfect. Thank you again, Mark. Both Marks and everybody else for everything. Let's move on. So we'll go to items 7.1 under general government. We have a resolution to adopt amended complaint policy. So Madam Clerk, you're going to speak to it. And I believe Andrea is also online somewhere in Technoland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the report is included in the agenda package and also a copy of the proposed complaint policy. So staff is recommending minor changes to our current complaint policy that was adopted in 2016. So the current policy was reviewed in collaboration with our bylaw enforcement staff and clerks from or within the shared service area. to improve the consistency and complaint handling within our same departments. So I'm just going to highlight some of the changes. So overall, the policy, the intent of the policy did not change. We only simplified some wording, some formatting. In the definitions, the definition of complaint included anonymous complaints within it. So we separated it just to clarify. We added the definition of investigator and officer just to clarify the roles that implement or that handle the complaints. We added a definition for frivolous and vexation complaints and wording to outline how these types of complaints are being addressed. This is not included in our current policy. And we specified the methods to submit a complaint. So we added more context to it and clarified that process. So that is about it for the amendments. Are there any questions?
Questions, anyone? No? I really liked the section about that if somebody calls in to file a formal complaint, it can be taken over the phone, and their consent is the people here fill it out and then process it accordingly, because I know there are some seniors that are, especially the seniors, that are not comfortable filling out online the complaint form, even though it may not be too complicated, but I think that's a good thing too. So, and I really like the changes that you've made to it. So it was good.
Thank you. Yes. So that process was clarified. It was a process that we were, that staff were doing, but we felt that it was important to clarify it in the policy as an option.
Questions or comment? If not, we do have, I believe, a resolution.
Yes.
I need a mover and a seconder. Randy and Renee.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be it resolved that council adopts the complaint policy as amended and dated March 2nd, 2022.
All those in favor? Thank you. Let's move on to 7.1.2, resolution to appoint council member to the Environmental Advisory Committee. And I believe that we have Dave that will be joining the Environmental Committee as a member.
Yes.
So I need a mover and a seconder to appoint Bob and Renee.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be it resolved that council appoints Councillor David View to the Environmental Advisory Committee for the remainder of the council term.
All those in favor? Thank you. Let's move on to finances. 7.2.1. We have a resolution to adopt a bylaw to authorize a transfer payment agreement for the Northern Ontario Resource Development Support Fund. And I believe Marc Fleury, you're going to speak to it.
Thank you. So back in November 2021, the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry announced a new multi-year funding formula or a funding program totaling $15 million per year, called the Northern Ontario Resource Development Support Fund, the NORDS Fund, to be used for repairs or upgrading of infrastructure impacted by the resource industry. So examples are forestry, mining, and aggregates. All 144 municipalities in Northern Ontario are eligible, and funding is an annual allocation for a period of 5 years from 21-22 to 25-26. Our share is $143,519. It is the municipality's intention to use a portion of the funding to help finance a multi-guérin culvert replacement and road rehabilitation capital project totaling $1.5 million. So this capital funding is included in the 2022 draft budget. The amount received during 2022 will be deferred and used when the capital project will be completed, expected in 2023. So it is recommended that the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for the NORDS Fund be accepted and signed by the municipality. Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Randy?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and to you, Mark, and this may be a little bit complicated for this forum, but how is the funding formula allocated? what's the determining factor for that amount of money being received and what can be done to boost that money in our half, or is that possible? Is it done by population and that way, or?
It's done, and there's a base amount per municipality. I believe it's $50,000. And the difference is based on household count. And the maximum funding per municipality is $400,000. So we're at 142, so we're mid-range almost.
So the industry usage of gravel and forestry, if it's concentrated further into a municipality, that doesn't affect the funding. It's done by household, not by usage. Okay, thank you.
Exactly.
Other questions? Then I believe we have a resolution, so I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Renee and seconded by Randy. Oh, Rick, sorry, I keep forgetting. Oh, now you're bigger on the screen, so I can see you now.
It is duly moved and seconded, but resolved that bylaw 2022-11, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and CAO to execute a transfer payment agreement for the Northern Ontario Resource Development Support Fund, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All those in favor? Thank you. Let's move on. And there is no report for Public Works and Environmental Services. So we'll move to Recreation and Community Service. And we have Rick, who's the chair of the Economic Development Advisory Committee. And I believe the committee met in February. So Rick, can you give us an update? You're on mute.
All right, sorry about that. So of course, the committee hasn't met in a little while. COVID has forced a lot of these meetings to be postponed for a while, and especially it's hard to do economic development when not too many things are happening around. So anyway, some of the things that we talked about is more of an update. We talked about the high-speed internet, which has been sort of something that I kept the heart since we started a few years back, but there is some progress moving on. I mean, there's fundings from the governments, both provincial and federal, but it's still going to be a slow thing. And I know Mark might have a little bit to add to that, but there is some funding coming, and hopefully there'll be some funding coming towards us specifically over the next little while. We also talked about the signage. So everybody's have seen this, the sign that we put on the Highway 69, and we are planning on adding more. So we talked about that. And what else did we talk about? Talked about other projects that are happening. The industrial park, of course, which was sold last year, and there's a plan for putting in a pretty neat structure there and business, and that's coming along. Well, it's coming along, but we're not there yet, but it's coming along. It'll be pretty cool once it's all done. And we talked about endorsing a ice fishing challenge, which I believe it works with an app, and people can actually join in with that. And that's about all that we talked about, I guess. And we had some discussions about other small things, but I'm not sure if anybody has any questions or comments.
Any questions for Rick? Oh, Bob?
Through you, Madam Chair, and this question is probably addressed to Mark. One of the items in your minutes, you talked about a 50-50 draw, and I know municipalities aren't eligible for this, but would like the firemen's fundraising committee qualify, or the library?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'd have to check on the status of their non-for-profit status, if they're officially registered or not. At a certain level, depending on what the fundraising amounts are, licenses are approved by the provincial government and not by the municipal government.
Mhm.
And the library is a good question because they technically run under the municipality's umbrella.
I'm asking just for information.
Being put on the spot, that's the information I have right now.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm sure you'll, thank you.
Any other questions for Rick? Seeing none, thank you, Rick. We'll move on now to Emergency and Protection Services. So before you, we have a report and a draft bylaw. So we're not voting on it tonight. With regards to a new bylaw, the responsible animal ownership bylaw. And I believe Kevin and Andrea are both on somewhere. Oh, there's Kevin. All right. And so
Yeah, I'm
Kevin,
here. Good
I'll
evening, Madam
turn
Mayor
it
and
over to
Council.
you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, we're going to run through the report real quick. There's been a lot of changes. The current animal control bylaw was enacted in 2014. Best practice is to review bylaws on a regular basis just to meet the needs of the municipality. The past couple of years, the bylaw department has seen an influx in animal control complaints. During the development of this bylaw, staff made every effort to be cognizant of what others' experiences were, what would be enforceable, and what could be put in place without causing a burden on resources or increasing our operating budgets significantly, while still holding animal owners responsible. The proposed bylaw will help give power to officers to rectify the issues we have been coming across with provincial offenses, set fines, and AMPs. In the new proposed animal control bylaw, will be known as the Responsible Animal Ownership Bylaw, we have simplified and added wording to strengthen the regulations with no change to the intent of the bylaw other than what's listed below. We've added some definitions to clarify and simplify the language, limited number of dogs without a kennel license, limited number of cats, strengthened provisions on care of all animals, added new section to licensed kennel operations, added list of prohibited animals, added process for decisions made in relation to vicious dogs, addition of set fines for livestock being kept on residential property, added provision to control horse feces within town limits. I'm just going to do a quick breakdown on a couple of the main ones. Kennel operations. For this section, an annual user fee will be included in the fees and regulated charges bylaw. And there'll be an inspection process from the bylaw department to ensure the well-being of animals under the care of the kennel. Prohibited animals, this section was included to be proactive instead of reactive, just due to our population changing, more people coming from down south, and to ensure potentially dangerous animals are not kept within the municipality. Vicious dogs. This bylaw was included, this bylaw included an appeal process for decisions made in relation to vicious dogs, so it's not on the officer. It will require council to establish an appeal committee, similar to the Property Standards Committee appeal process, and these two committees can be joint, meaning like one committee could deal with both bylaws. Livestock, many hours in our department have been spent trying to rectify livestock issues within residential settings. Right now, the zoning bylaw vaguely speaks to this issue, but the officers do not have any option either to issue Part 3s and go directly to court. This proposed bylaw will allow set fines to be used to promote compliance. Backyard hens. In January 2021, Council passed a resolution to staff to provide options to regulate backyard chickens and other types of animals as deemed appropriate. The proposed changes in this bylaw address some of the matters brought forward at the time, such as creating set fines to deal with the non-compliance regarding illegal livestock on properties and other prohibited animals. If council was interested in creating a bylaw specifically to allow backyard hens or chickens in an urban setting, the zoning bylaw would have to be amended and a standalone regulating bylaw would need to be created. In conclusion, staff is supportive of these recommendations. The proposed responsible animal ownership bylaw and associated amendments will improve the municipality's ability to hold animal owners responsible for the nuisance activities of their pets and will improve the ability to protect the community from vicious dogs, cat infestations, livestock being held on inadequate properties, and a variety of other issues we've been facing in the bylaw department. The day following this presentation, this will be posted for the public on our website to let them have comments on this. I know the mayor Madam Mayor did have some questions, so I'm going to start with those. I do have them laid out right now, just so I can clarify before we start. Questions from all council. The first question was definition of a leash, and it should be clearly specified. It is covered in 2.2. It's just dogs at large, and it gives clarification on you can't have your dog loose, not on your property, and a length of the leash. Next question was service dogs, if they were required to wear an identification garment when out in public. For service dogs, there is no clear guidelines provincially or in Canada. Yeah, but if council would like to add something to this bylaw for identification, we can discuss it for sure. Next question was about seasonal residents. We do have a section saying that if you're only in the municipality within 14 days, you don't need a dog license here. But if council would like to add something clarification for seasonal residents or time allotment for a dog being here or tags for another municipality, we can discuss that. And under section 12, Madam Mayor asked about, we have amps put into this bylaw because we are looking at putting, Andrea would be able to speak more on amps. She is the expert on this. She'll be bringing it to council soon, but it's just within house we'd be able to have set fines instead of going to POA. But you can only use POA or amps as far as I know, so it would be one or the other. It'd be nice to have both, just so if the person was a renter or from out of town, you could use your POA, but if they were a resident, you can use in-house or administrative penalties. And the last question she asked was for Schedule B on banned dogs. What happens if people have them? Well, there's already DOLA in place, so we would use the provincial legislation and we would go from there with that. So that's all the questions I got from Madam Mayor. I'd like to hand it back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin, for answering all those. Before I go to Randy, with regards to seasonal residents, so like there's really no provision in there for seasonal residents. So people may be coming who own property here and come for 2 or 3 or 4 months out of the year. And if they happen to have a dog, but let's say they live in Sarnia, but they have a dog license from Sarnia, do they need to require that? And maybe in that section, it should be clarified. Like, to me, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's not clear. I guess clarification would be what I would propose. Okay, Randy?
Yeah, through you,
sorry.
Madam Mayor.
Sure.
Yeah, all we have is the 14 days. So yeah, whatever you guys would like to decide, or we can add it.
Not that I just want a clarification. So technically, if somebody comes who owns property, who has a dog license from another municipality, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, even if that dog is picked up, there's a form or a way that you can retrieve that information from somewhere? If they do have a dog license?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so we would just call the municipality that it is licensed to and find the owner and then look them up and return the dog.
So to answer your question, Madam Mayor, if it's just a provision that seasonal residents will be permitted as long as they have an existing dog license from their permanent residential address. Does that make sense?
Okay, Randy?
To you, Madam Mayor. Kevin, I have a curiosity on Schedule A, Section 3. It states that no person shall keep or permit to be keeping an animal that is venomous or poisonous, with the exception of these 5 venomous, poisonous snakes and I guess spiders and scorpion here as well. So why would we allow those venomous animals to not be regulated as the others are? It's my curiosity.
Head, Kevin?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I knew that was going to come up. Those are just, they're specified in Schedule A, and they are like tarantulas, certain types of scorpion, stuff that is sold commonly in pet stores that are, they're deemed poisonous, but there's nothing harmful about them. So that's why those have been left out. It's common within like pretty much all bylaws that those specific 5 are allowed.
Are also, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's provisions in there that says they have to be in an enclosed container or aquarium or whatever the heck it is, right?
Yeah, no, there is. And I was just curious though, why accept 5 when the rest were not, but you've answered. So thank you.
Other questions with regards to this?
Yep.
Go ahead, Rick, sorry.
Okay, just want to go back to the dog question that we were talking about a few minutes ago. So if somebody's coming in from out of town that has a dog, so my question is that what purpose do we have to force them to have a dog license if they're going to be here for 2 or 3 months? Is there a need for it other than just collecting a fee?
Well, it's what happens to the dog if they don't have a license and they're not licensed anywhere and the dog is loose, they need a way to retrieve information on that dog. It's not just to get a fee, but it's a means and a way to identify dogs that are lost or whatever. So, and the seasonal people shouldn't have to buy two dog license if they're already licensed in Sudbury or Sarnia or whatever. But there's no provision in there. It only talks about if you're not a resident here and you're only coming for 14 days, then you don't have to do anything. But what happens if you are a seasonal? And we should be addressing that for clarification purposes, not to collect.
Right, so if I can rebuttal to that. So can we differentiate between having an annual license and having a dog tag? So I mean, you can have a dog tag with the dog's name and a phone number on it, and that could be on the dog for years, but you don't necessarily renew the license fee. So I'm more concerned about the annual fee than the dog tag itself. I would assume that every owner would put a dog tag on their dog for very common, reasonable reason, for good reasons, but having the permit itself. So I'm asking, why do we need to charge a permit for somebody who's seasonal here? And I understand the fact about the dog tag, but anyway, that's more my question.
Okay, well, again, my position is you don't need to have another license for the seasonal people, provided that the dog is licensed in the city that they reside in permanently. So why? Yeah.
But that's not my question. I understand. I mean, I'm not for forcing somebody to have the permit if they have it somewhere else. But if regardless if they have it somewhere else or not, how are you going to know anyway? If they're here for 3 or 4 months or 2 months or so, if the dog has a dog tag on it and he's loose, you'll call him, but you won't necessarily going to call Sarnia and ask if they had a permit for a renewal permit for that dog for the year, right? Is it of our concern?
Yeah, Mel wants to respond to that.
Through you, Madam Chair, if this is what council feels that is important, we can clarify in the bylaw that as long as the seasonal owner who has a dog, that they are licensed from where they reside, and that the dog has a tag, and that the tag is securely fixed to them, so we can identify them for enforcement purposes.
Kevin, did you want to say anything?
Through Madam Mayor, yeah, that's exactly what I would suggest. We can just add some wording for seasonal residents. It's not a big deal. And as long as the tag's on them and we can get a hold of the owner, then it should be fine.
Rick, did you have any other questions or comments with regards to? No, you're okay.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify the difference between a dog tag and a permit. So thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, Bob?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to come back to these prohibited animals and I echo Randy's here. And I apologize, my computer is frozen at page 17 here. I can't get back into the schedules. But that's a Schedule A, there was the whole list there and some of them it really opened my eyes. Do we really want some of those animals in our municipality? Snakes, 2 meters. I don't want to see a snake 2 meters. I don't want to see a snake 1 foot. I think we're giving too much leeway to, I don't know. Those are my feelings. Anyway, thank you.
Well, I'm not a big fan of snakes either, but you know, what we consider as pets and other people consider as pet are two different things. So, oof, yeah. Anyway, Kevin?
Through Madam Mayor, just to speak on that, like as of right now, the way it sits, anybody can have any of these things, right? So we're trying to introduce something that would, you know, prohibit 30-foot python coming into the municipality, right? So that's why we've taken examples from like 20 different municipalities and kind of followed suit on what they've done, and this is where this bylaw has come from. So.
Kevin, just a quick question again, under prohibited animals. I wasn't sure if it was sort of a little joke or not there, but under A, you talk about ducks, geese, swans, and screamers. And I thought perhaps you wanted to make sure we were reading it because I don't know what a screamer is. And I have a pretty wild imagination, but I'm sure. So I wasn't sure what's a screamer? Like, is it a real animal? Well, it must be if you put it in, right?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, it's just a type of like duck species. So it's just the term they use for it. So
Must be loud then. Anyway, any other comments? Seeing none, Kevin and Andrea, I think you guys did an amazing job. Throughout my notes, when I read it, like I've written on a number of occasions where it's good, 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 good. I think this is needed in our municipality, and I'm sure it took a lot of work to put it together. So thank you. And so now the process is we're going to post it to the public, our municipal website, and then members of the public will have 30 days to respond, and then it'll come back to us, right? With any changes. Is that the process?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe Mel could speak more towards that.
Sorry, Mel.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, you are correct. That is exactly the process. So we're going to post a notice tomorrow morning on our website allowing consultation until March 31st, I believe. I'm not sure which day it ends up. And then council is going to be presented with the final version of the bylaw on April 6th and whether there are any changes. So for example, the amendment or the wording that you're suggesting tonight for the seasonal, that is going to be amended into the bylaw in time for April 6th.
Perfect. Thank you very much again, Kevin, Andrea. And we now are moving to building and planning and development. So before you have a resolution to adopt a bylaw to authorize the agreement with the economic partners, Sudbury East West Nipissing Incorporated, for our Sudbury East Region Economic Development Officer. So need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Renee and Bob.
It is duly moved and seconded, but resolved that bylaw 2022-10 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and CIO to execute an agreement with economic partners Sudbury East West Nipissing Inc. for Sudbury East Region Economic Development Officer be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Thank you. And just to remind you, it's just we received the funding for Sebastian's position, correct, Mark?
Yeah, just to provide a little bit more context as details. FedNor has contributed $238,000 over 3 years in partnership with Mark Stay Warren and ourselves to have a regional economic development officer and being led by economic partners. So over the 3-year period, the contribution split in 50-50 with Mark Stay Warren. Our responsibility is about 94,000. And then we also have operational expenses. Overall, over the next 3 years, and I alluded to it in the budget a little bit in the presentation, we're looking for an average commitment from our municipality about $24,000 over the next 3 years, which falls within our budget parameters for this year and in the next couple of years. So again, funding for a worthwhile program.
Yeah, that's great. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Let's move on. There is no correspondence this time. No. Okay. I need a resolution to adopt the items contained under the consent agenda, moved by Randy, seconded by Renee.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be resolved that council approves the items of the consent agenda under section 9.1.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. No notices of motions tonight?
None.
None. Okay, let's go around announcements and inquiries, and we'll start, let's see, from Bob. Right down. Oh, no, we'll start with Richard. Before I forget you again. Sorry, Rick.
Thank you. Well, I don't have too much to say, except I was talking to a few of the organizers about the ball tournament, and I think it's going to be a go. So they're having meetings, I believe, shortly about it. But anyway, hopefully that's going to happen, and be able to have a big crowd as all the rules are slacking towards being able to go out and participate a little bit more. So that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. Then now I'll go to Bob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to talk about the ball tournament also, but I'm going to leave it to Renee since she's chair of that committee. Just something came to my mind, and for my information, when we were talking about the animal bylaw, who do we buy the services from right now, like for a dog pound when we?
Actually, we just entered into a contract with the North Bay Humane Society, if I'm not mistaken. That's okay. Where we go.
Thank you. And one more quick question. In the old days, and I'm sure Councillor Winborn will remember, council had to name a person as a fence viewer. Does that still exist? Maybe to Mark? You don't remember that? God, I'm older than you are. Oh, okay, we'll leave it then. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, right. It still exists? Oh, it's for real?
I know it's for real.
I'm not very aware of it, but it's still an act. And I know that probably our chief building official would respond to any fence non-compliance or fence viewing needs, or so it still exists.
Thank you, Mel.
Go ahead, Andrea.
I was just going to say, I did have some experience with this in the municipality of St. Charles. We did have to appoint a fence viewer, and it was actually the clerk who took it on. There was a dispute between neighbors where the Line Fences Act was brought into play. And I believe this is one of the oldest pieces of legislation, definitely in Ontario, maybe in Canada. We haven't had to use it in French River, but it was, I think, used between disputes between neighbors for who would pay for fences. Yeah. So I have heard of it, Bob.
Okay, I learned something new tonight. Randy.
Through you, Madam Chair, I just want to say that I've had a really great week this week, out meeting constituents in our area. It's been really cool to go door to door and visit, especially some of the folks down in Dean's area where I don't normally get to go, and just to see, you know, who's moved into our area, who the new people are, to see some of their concerns in the community, and some of the praise that we've received for some of the great things we've done. It's been really rewarding just to get into my municipality and see some people that I wouldn't normally see. And it's been a really great experience that way to touch people and to just to generally meet people in person. So I really have appreciated that this week that I've completed almost all my door knocking in this community. So it's been really, really great.
It's great. Mr. Dean.
I'm going to talk about a couple things that kind of just came to mind as I listened to things tonight. First thing I'm going to say is that in my 75 years here, the changes in our municipality, well, it wasn't a municipality, of course, 75 years ago that it is today. But when I think about all of the townships that comprise our municipality and how really heavily forested and wild a lot of it is, and then I listen to us making rules on how people can have dogs and what they can do with them, and all the animals, our animal bylaw, and I think, boy, we either have come a long way or we've sunk a long way. I'm not sure which way, but I remember when it was, you didn't have to worry about having a dog license or worry about whether your dog was running around the neighborhood. Everybody's did that. That was just the way the community was. And I think that it's, and I'm not sure that I kind of like all of the changes that seem to be coming with being a more orderly municipality. Now, I realize some of the things we are proposing are good, and I'm talking particularly about the care of animals. I think that that's a good thing that we should be doing to ensure that the animals that people have well cared for. But I'll leave it with that. I just couldn't help but think of how things have changed and can continue to change. But I'm going to mention one other thing, because on our environmental committee the other day, we were having a meeting. Bob will, of course, recall he was chairing the meeting, but the issue of having your recyclables in a clear plastic bag came up because I mentioned it, because I read in the new waste management or our revised waste management bylaw that you're not supposed to put recyclables in a plastic bag. And I thought, I'd never heard of that, but I thought that's what I have a whole box full of clear black plastic bags for, was to put recyclables in. And then into the bins is where they went, or sometimes out at the landfill site in the big bin there. But and then I find out that no, they're not supposed to do that because, and it makes good sense when I heard the reason, they're not recyclable, those bags. And so I guess that's the reason why. But I don't think most of the people in the municipality are aware of that. And I think that we ought to do something more in terms of getting this message out about not. I was at the bin site yesterday and in Albin, and I was emptying my plastic bag of recyclables into the bin, and a woman came along and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Just emptying it." Well, she said, "Why don't you just throw the bag in?" And she said, "I've got a bag here I'm going to throw in." I said, "Well, you're not supposed to." "What?" She said, "Why?" So I told her the rationale, and she said, "Well, I didn't know that." And one of the guys that was on our committee said he didn't know about this. So obviously an awful lot of people are not aware that you're not supposed to put your recyclables in a plastic bag in the bin or at the landfill. That's, I mean, if it was going into the landfill, I guess it'd be different, but, and I think we better make sure that people understand that, because almost everyone was putting their recyclable. I mean, you just look in the bins, and most of the recyclables that were going in a bag. Anyway, I'll leave it that, Madam Mayor, just comments that I wanted to make.
Thank you. Renee?
Hi, it is a good comment, Dean. I think I know I was guilty of that, the plastic bag or the wrapper on your bottle for your bottles of water, you know. And I think what's confusing to a lot of people that are seasonal is that in the bigger cities, they can recycle a lot of these materials that we cannot recycle now. So I do think we need to find a way to, to promote and the recycling materials in the area. And I had mentioned this, maybe posting through the library just every week. Can you recycle this? Kind of like an information thing or something. Is this recyclable? Yes, no. And just to make people aware that, not, and just throw random things in there to see how people think of what is and what isn't. Because it is very, very confusing from one place to the next. I think, Randy, do you want to say something else on that? Okay. So we discussed, yes, the family baseball tournament. We have had one meeting. We are scheduled for another meeting next week. We are hoping to have one. And so we're going to hope that COVID goes, in the right direction. But for now, we are working and we are planning on it. So look for some more info in the next few months to come. So I think that's where we're headed with that. As far as I know, we had a house fire, so the firemen attended to a few weeks ago. That was really bad, but I'm glad to hear nobody was hurt in that fire. So that was really, really good news. They worked really hard, but the house couldn't be saved. But so I think our firemen, deserve a pat on the back for that. And that's about it for me. I guess the Rapids have made the playoffs, and glad to see all the community projects that we're going to work on this summer. And that's about it.
Thank you. I think Mel, you wanted to respond?
Yes, I think it's a great opportunity just to inform council in our recent newsletter that we sent with the tax bills. Well, in almost every newsletter, we push our residents to go to our website for information on recycling, on our bin sites and on our landfill site. Again, in this newsletter, we're pushing residents to go to our recycling page, which we added information about the new pilot program for curbside for recycling, and to our Waste Wizard. So we have, it's an app that our residents can use, and it identifies which objects are recyclable or which ones need to go to the waste. For our area. So, and it's always updated to what our supplier provides as information. So that's on our website under recycling.
Andy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Dean's got a hot mic there. As past chair of the environmental committee, I was just going to state that our I guess it was last spring that our contractor stopped accepting plastic bags and such. And that I'm surprised a committee member didn't realize that, as it was discussed at committee. But we had the Waste Wizard app on our website. I was going to ask to direct people there that they could definitely research what is and what isn't recyclable. And the new pilot program will remove bags altogether from the waste stream for the curbside members in the community areas. So that'll help cut down on that a lot as well.
Thank you. As for me, the Rapids are playing on Saturday, March the 5th at 7, I think it is. The Albin seniors are restarting their lunches on Fridays at the community center in Albin, and it'll be every Friday. Just wanted to make a comment. I've received some really positive comments from the people that are using the French River Snowmobile Association trails. Apparently they're absolutely amazing, and they've done an amazing job keeping them up this winter. And Dean, as far as I'm concerned, I think we've come a long way. The world doesn't stop. So I think we've made lots of progress. There's still lots to do, but maybe part of it is the orderly part of, because more people, instead of having, 200-300 people here, now we can say in the thousands, especially in the summer, we probably hit 5,000 or 6,000. So So I think we've come a long way and we offer a lot to our resident here. Yes, we are. We're huge for sure, for sure. Any comments from staff? No? From our fans? Not use any bags. You're supposed to take your bag, I believe, and I could not even begin to answer that. To buy them back, a buyback, it's like. Oh, you can't use the clear ones either. You're supposed to take your bag or and empty it and take your bag home. Yeah, yeah, that's the idea. So no blue, no clear. Yeah. What is it? Oh. Well, that's a screamer for sure. All right. And on that note, I need a resolution to adopt the confirmation bylaw, moved by Renee, seconded by Dean. All those in favor? And now I need a resolution to adjourn, moved by Randy and Dean. All those in favor? Thank you. Merci, miigwech.
Funny part about it is the worst thing